All right, we're back again. Tonight's scheduled guest is Nicolay. He's a producer of hip hop and R&B, one of the founding members of the Foreign Exchange. We're going to have him come on in just a bit. While we're doing that, we're going to have on next week's show Willie Scandals scheduled to come on. In addition to that, we're getting ready to have the next week on the 18th, Sauce from the Valley. And on the 19th, we'll have our special episode of Underground Experience and Hip Hop What Ifs. Eddie Ruger scheduled to come on. So as soon as we can get him in here, um, we'll go ahead and start the interview. On the 25th, we have Finian saying Omer, aka Sean Dawn. That'll be on the 25th of October. And of course, the real kids will be on November 1st. Right, we got Nicolay in the building. How you doing, man?
What's going on? Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you good.
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, how's everything going, man?
Everything is going really good, man. I've had a very busy couple of weeks, but everything is really good. I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited for it to be the weekend because I finally got a day or two of rest. So I'm really excited.
So for people who may not be familiar, but they should be familiar, just give them a little bit of your background. Let them know, how you got started and, you know, just a little bit of your history.
Yeah. Let me actually turn a little bit of light on because I just think I could use a little bit of backlighting over here. There we go. So I'm originally from the Netherlands in Europe. I'm a music producer. I got my start in the early 2000s with a group called the Foreign Exchange. Our album Connected came out literally 20 years ago, which is kind of crazy to say that. But our first album came out in 2004. Since then, we've gone on to drop a number of albums as a group, and I've done a number of albums on the solo tip. You know, people know me from the City Lights series. That's one of them. So yeah, just quite busy 20 years to look back on with a lot of music, a lot of achievement, a lot of touring, a lot of shows, and just been kind of pushing ever since. So I moved to the States in 2006 and have lived here now for 18 years, just kind of building a community of fellow-minded artists, you know what I mean? So yeah, man, it's been quite the 2 decades, I'll say that.
So how is it, the transition from moving from overseas to the States, kind of, the comparing of the different scenes, um, how are the scenes different and musically?
I will say that it. I mean, it. I think overseas in Europe, it seems like people are a little bit more focused still on the sound that kind of was prevalent here in the 90s, the so-called you know, kind of second kind of golden era. Like you'll see a lot of people, a lot of hip hop artists like still touring very heavily in Europe and in Japan, because there's a lot of appreciation for that sound still over there. You know, over here, I think people are more kind of focused on the here and now. Also, I will say that the competition over here is like greater. It's just a bigger country, you know what I'm saying? So so the competition over here is it's a little bit more intense. Like I think the music scene here is a little bit more serious in that regard. But you know, there's upsides to that too. I think people, because the competition is so serious, like people really you know, people work harder, you know what I mean? Like I think that there's a more of a sort of struggle to the top, if you will, that you don't really see that over there. So, but yeah, there's, I mean, they're two kind of completely different worlds in many ways.
Definitely. I was I interviewed a uh, DJ from France probably about, I guess, 2, 3 months ago.
Uh,
DJ King Flow. He was definitely saying, see, echoing some of the sentiments that you echoed, as far as like people just have a more focus on, you know, the boom bap sound, and definitely are more in tune with lyricism than we seem to be here currently. Do you
yeah,
think that's a
I would
lot of?
echo that. I would echo that sentiment. I mean, you know, I think that there's upsides and downsides to that. Um, in Europe, they definitely are very much on that boom bap sound. That's why I said a lot of rap artists are still touring there every year that may not even like tour like that over here. I do think people have an appreciation for it. You know, at the same time, there's something to be said for, you know, the way that in America, like people kind of really gravitate towards sort of the here and the now. You know, so it's kind of a different thing in that regard. But you know, I think the way that I always tell it to people, like you know, I was originally, when I was in Europe making music, like people always said that I had a American sound, which was interesting to me because I'm very much, you know, I very much come from there. But I was always told that I have an American sound, and then when I came here and started music here, like people said, like, "Oh, we really love that sort of European vibe that you bring to things." So it was interesting how, you know, and later, like later somebody, I forgot who it was, but somebody gave me the phrase that you're never a prophet in your own land, and that really stuck with me. You know, that like you have to sort of go outside of your bubble, outside of your comfort zone, outside of where you are from, in order to get success. And I tell that to a lot of artists nowadays when they feel a certain frustration about not being supported by their city or by their state even, or by their community. I always tell them, like, look, like in a lot of ways you're going to have to go outside of your area if you really want to get the recognition that you are looking for. That feels a little counterintuitive, but that's true. Like a lot of artists that I know that are incredible don't necessarily get the hometown support that you would expect. It's just kind of a sort of weird sort of thing that feels a little counterintuitive. But you know, I think once you step outside of your comfort zone and you see that there's other cities out there, there's other states out there, other communities out there, things usually fall into place. You know what I mean?
I think that's very true. I think you know, your network is your net worth, and definitely finding it in your hometown is going to be more difficult because you're fighting against so many different things and so many different people trying to
Exactly.
do the same type of thing you're doing.
Well,
So you have to
and
kind of go outside. And,
there's a little bit of envy going on too. Like when you make moves in your city, like some people might support it and somebody else might look at you and like they wish that it was them, you know what I mean? So it yeah, it can get kind of interesting. And I always tell people, like, do you, and then you will find your audience. You know what I mean? You will find where it is or who it is that will support you, and sometimes it comes in unexpected forms. It's unexpected places. It's places where you least expect. For instance, for me, I was still very much, I was living in Europe when Connected came out, our first album, and it was really embraced in the American underground scene. So at first that felt kind of interesting because I was not anywhere near there at the time. But I got a lot of love from people who were on the American underground scene. So that kind of showed me that it's not really where you're at. It's who you reach. It's who, the people that you make a connection with, that you form a connection with, and it can sometimes be in the least expected places.
Definitely. Um, to the point, the things that you've done. I mean, you've had they've had that Grammy nomination. How did you feel about that once y'all got nominated for a Grammy?
At the time, I was really excited about it. I can't lie. I mean, it wasn't something that I had ever expected. Like there's the nomination. Oh shit, behind me. I got it in a little frame. Because it does mean a lot to me on a professional level. It's one of those, like, it's like a glass ceiling that you hit. You know what I mean? I think I never considered that we would be a part of that world. Like we are in all ways, we are kind of bedroom musicians. We are from that generation that started just making records in a spare room in the house. You know what I mean? We never frequented like professional studios, or like we're purely self-taught, and we are, from the generation of kind of, I always say Def Punk, who's a great example of people that started just making records at the crib with just some very minimal equipment, And so I never really thought that I would be embraced by the traditional industry. So that was a really, really big honor, and it was really nice for our families and for, the people around us to sort of see that we were gaining a certain notoriety that made them understand what it is that we were doing for all these hours in our rooms. You know what I'm saying? But truth be told, it didn't really. It was like for neither Fonte or I. It was really kind of like it was an experience that we really enjoyed, but we also realized that we weren't really made for that world. That as much as it is fun to get recognition by your peers, especially on a professional level, like that experience sort of really showed us that we are just in it for the music, and that
Mm.
we really only care about making records. You know what I'm saying? So we don't really, we went to the Grammys, and it was an incredible experience, and we were very happy to be there. We met a lot of incredible people, but then it was sort of time to go home and get back to making music. So I'm not trying to be flippant, but it was, at the end of the day, sort of like a thing that on the one hand was a big honor. And every now and then I'll leverage it. I'll be like, yeah, I'm Grammy nominated. You know what I'm saying? Like just to kind of throw that out there, just my pedigree, you know what I mean? Because it does sort of mean people instantly sort of know what it means, you know what I mean? So I don't really flaunt it, but every now and then I'll throw it out there just to show people that I didn't, that I'm legit, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, to me, it's still all about sort of making the music. And I at the end of the day, man, I care more about props from the audience, from listeners, you know what I mean? Like I really care when people give us props about our records, or tell us about that they danced their first wedding dance to our song, or that they grew up on our stuff. Like when the music finds its way in people's lives is when that's when I'm really excited to hear that, because that's kind of that interhuman connection. You know what I'm saying?
Definitely. And I think there's a definite, I guess, danger to kind of getting hooked up into that world where you're seeking validation from an industry that really is kind of more generated on the commercial side than where y'all actually started out.
Yeah, I think that's partly true. I mean, it is a little bit of a popularity contest. And we kind of experienced that firsthand. And I'm not saying that we should have won, but we should have won. So I'll be, I'll be, I'll leave the humbleness aside, and but it is a little bit of a popularity contest. So the fact that we were in there was already like a really big deal, and so we really took it in stride. And again, it's a big honor, and I would never want to minimize it. But at the end of the day, like neither one of us started making music to win a Grammy. Like we started making music because we wanted to express ourselves, and we wanted to, and we had a passion for it, and we love doing it. So yeah, the accolades are great, and it can be important, as in like, more people definitely knew us after the Grammy nomination than before. But like I might, like when I want to be like, when all is said and done, like what do I want to be remembered for? It's not the Grammy nomination per se, but the music itself, you know what I mean? So I all that to say, I really respect the platform, and I respect the Recording Academy. But at the end of the day, I just want to be remembered for the actual music that I made, not necessarily the accolades. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And you kind of touched on, working with Fonte. Just a little bit of history lesson. How did y'all really, kind of connect up and
So
first
we
start out?
yeah, we kind of found each other through a website called OK Player, and this was well before social media. So nowadays, it's not really a big deal to get together with somebody using like either Facebook or even Instagram or TikTok. But when we became familiar with each other, it was the early 2000s, and it was before high-speed internet, before Gmail, before Facebook, before any of that stuff. And so at the time, you had something called message boards, which still exist to a large extent. At the time, were kind of the primary platform that you would interact with people online, and it's a little bit more of a static form. But like OK Player had a message board, and I ended up on there because a lot of the records that I loved at the time had the OK Player link on the booklets. And so one day I just became curious, you know what I mean, about what that was. I followed the link, and I ended up on the website. And it took a while before I actually started posting on the message boards. But Fonte was somebody who I would see in some of the same topics. We would talk about some of the same music that we love. And so before we kind of really knew about the music that we did respectively, we just sort of kind of got an idea of like, oh, like he likes this and that, he likes the same stuff that I'm into. So there was a little bit of a rapport there, and then that kind of was taken to the next level when I posted a beat that I had done one day, and I really just sort of gathered the courage, if you will, to a beat out there, because I felt, you know what, if anybody will tell me the truth, it's gonna be on OK Player, good or bad. You know what I mean? I was kind of ready for whatever. I just wanted to know where I stood. I've been making music on my own for about 2 years, and it was a time where I really wanted to get some feedback from people that I respected, and that I knew were going to not hold back, you know what I mean, which the internet to this day doesn't do. So but to my surprise and elation and joy, like people really loved it. Like people really had a lot of nice things to say about it. And Fonte was one of those people, and so he loved that track so much that he asked me like, yo, what's your plans with any of these? And I didn't have any plans at the time. I was just making beats at nighttime just to break sort of the monotony of the job life. That I was working at a call center at the time, at an internet help desk. And while it was a good job, I didn't really like the work. I didn't really like the computer help desks are are challenging because a lot of people don't know the first thing about computers, you know. So it was like, there's a lot of, you know, calls where it was just like, you know, did you try to turn it on? Oh, okay. You know, like stuff like that. But at the same time, it was a step up from my first call center job. I was selling insurance, and that was terrible because I was cold calling people, you know. And so at least with the internet help desk, you know, you got the calls incoming, so you're not disturbing people. So that was a step up. But either way, I didn't really like that job life. So I was making music just simply just to kind of enjoy myself at night, you know what I mean? So I had no plans. I really had no sort of even desire, like I had no concept of a music career at all, you know what I mean? I was just making music and just enjoying, you know, expressing myself and coming up with sounds that I would love, you know, that would make me think of the records that I loved or the groups that I love. So yeah, I really didn't have any plans. And so when he suggested to record something over it, I jumped at the opportunity, you know, because I just didn't really know what, like, I had no agenda. And so he, it was him and you know, his partner and little brother, Big Pooh, who, you know, they recorded to my first tracks, you know, to my first 3 or 4 tracks. And when I got those vocals back, I just sort of, it opened my eyes to a point of like, okay, so this is something that we're creating now, and this is, the potential here is incredible. But it was still just, you know, it was cats sort of like just hanging out, like not hanging out because we were an ocean apart, but, you know, making music together because we believed in it, you know what I'm saying? Because there was a trust, but no real plan until much later, you know.
You talked about you know, influences and stuff like that. What were some of your initial influences kind of starting out?
Oh man, I would say my first real influence in life, like, or in music rather, well, in life too, come to think of it, but my first real influence, like musically, was Stevie Wonder. When I was a little kid, like I would sort of go through my mother's record collection, and my mother had a record in there from an artist named Stevie Wonder, and it had a green sort of aqua cover. It had Braille on it, which I found fascinating as a kid. And it turned out that Stevie Wonder was a blind artist, and the Braille was there because he was, you know, he wanted to be inclusive to blind people. And so the album was Secret Life, A Journey Through the Secret Life of Plants, which is the album that Stevie dropped kind of as a follow-up to Songs in the Key of Life. And the album, like, at the time in his career, the album was a commercial flop because people loved Songs in the Key of Life. It had like 1 million songs on it, a lot of hits on it. And then he dropped a concept album that was kind of the soundtrack to a movie that I think never even truly came out officially. But that was my first exposure to Stevie, so I didn't know any better. And I loved that album. I loved the songwriting on it. I loved the instrumentation on it. I loved everything about it. So my first real musical influence was Stevie Wonder, and I credit him for being really interested in synthesizers. You know, like, he was really experimenting with synthesizers on that record and creating like really new sounds. And so Stevie Wonder, and then the first artist that I really kind of discovered on my own accord was Prince. Around the time of Sign of the Times, so this would have been '87 when I was 13 years old. I discovered Prince and got sort of, you know, hip to the fact that he played all the instruments and produced himself and had built his own studio, and, you know, was kind of a real sort of pre-independent artist. You know, like, he was on a major label, he was on Warner Brothers, so, you know, he was a major artist, but for all intents and purposes, he kind of was an independent artist. Like, he produced himself, and he would just give them the record when it was done. Like, it wasn't like, you know, like he allowed any sort of influence from outside. And I really admired the fact that he played all of his instruments. Like, he was in control of his own destiny in every way. Like, he controlled his look, Like he would come back with it. Like nowadays, artists are generally always in the spotlight. They don't really, but back then, before social media, artists would drop an album and they would do their cycle, they do concerts, and then they would kind of fall off the map for a little bit, and again, you had TV, you had some music programs and shit, but like for instance, a Prince, like he would leave for a little bit, and you would really hear a lot about him, and then he'd come back. All of a sudden, he had a new single, he had a new band, he had a new image, like a new look, like he had new colors, like it was the whole thing, and like that was something that I really, really loved, and I think I kind of missed that a little bit about the present time, where you were kind of encouraged to always be out there, to always do something. But back then, like an artist could maybe take a year or something, and you wouldn't really hear a lot about them. You know what I mean? And then they would come back, and it'd be a completely different time and era in their careers. You know what I'm saying? So I discovered Prince, and that was a musician who really sort of like influenced me to become a music producer, because I really loved that he produced himself, that he knew how to, record himself. He knew how to work a mixing board, and he wrote all his own songs. Like he was truly a one-man band, like kind of a Renaissance man, So
Definitely.
later on, I got exposed to hip hop, and I got really influenced by groups like De La Soul and Tribe Called Quest, Gangstar, but also like I was really big on West Coast hip hop when it kind of came out. Like the first Snoop album I love The Chronic by Dr. Dre. So I started listening to hip hop, I think early '90s, late '80s, but like early '90s is when it really sort of started, like kind of becoming sort of the dominant music that I listened to and that I was influenced by. So by the time I started doing music myself, it kind of took the form of hip hop, because that was sort of what I was really listening to at the time. And what I liked about hip hop, making hip hop beats, is like I could do it on my own. I didn't need a band or anything like that. Didn't need a drummer or whatever. Like you could sort of make these kind of fully formed pieces like completely on your own. So I just started making hip hop beats kind of in the style of like, DJ Premier, like Jazzy Jeff, you know, certainly Tribe Called Quest, De La Soul, the whole kind of native tongue clique. Jay Dilla was another one that I was very much JD, as he went by at the time. High Tech is another producer that I really, really admired and sort of took a lot of influence from. So, by the time I was making our first album, Connected, I was kind of really focused on hip hop as an influence.
To kind of go back to your point on people being pushed out, I think a lot of artists today are really kind of oversaturated the game a little bit, and I think the quality suffered because of it. I think you could do that back then, have an album and essentially eat off that album for a year or more, you know, because you had so much quality material on that album
Uh,
for people to digest.
yeah, you know, I I think over time I started of course I'm a quality guy, like first and foremost, but I like making music so much that it just kept coming, you know what I mean? And so really once, like, just to kind of go back to the previous, like when Connected came out in '04, like we kind of got on a train and I just didn't want to get off. Like I just was very much like, okay, like this is an opportunity. I just don't want to squander the opportunity. So pretty much from that time on, man, like we been grinding it out ever since. And so, I even like, I will be very honest, like I have to tell myself sometimes to take breaks because I'm always kind of, I'm so used to pushing that, and I think it comes from really the fact that, again, we had an opportunity that I just didn't want to squander, you know what I mean? Because now it's crazy because 20 years on, look back and I realize, like, I mean, all these albums that we've done over the years, like it's like dozens of albums, you know what I'm saying, between my solo stuff and between the Foreign Exchange and then the stuff that I produce for others. Man, it's just so much music. And it's kind of interesting because you almost sort of, like, somebody will tell me something like, and be like, yo, my favorite track is like X, Y, and Z. And I'll be like, I don't even remember, like, I don't even remember, like, what, like, and then they'll be like, oh, it's on this and this. And I'm like, oh, yeah, like, I remember. And then they're like, yo, what was your inspiration behind it? And I'm like, man, I have no idea. Like, I really don't. Because it's like I've been doing this stuff every day, literally for 20 years, like every day, you know what I mean? So but I will tell you, like, I'm still excited to find out what I'll do tomorrow, you know what I mean? Like, I'm still always kind of, like, I'm a firm believer that my best work is in front of me, not behind me, which as an artist, you have to feel that way. A lot of fans will likely not agree, and that's fine. Like I say, I like to go back to Prince. Like, when Prince dropped Purple Rain, everything he did after Purple Rain was not Purple Rain for people. You know what I mean? And yet he kept pushing forward because he always believed, like, like, why would you look in the rearview mirror? Because that's not where we're going. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? And so
exactly.
I've always felt that, like, so interested to know, like, what the next music is that I would come up with, that I always firmly believe, like, my best work is still in front of me. So, I'm still, in a lot of ways, like, I'm older now, you know what I mean? So you kind of slow down a little bit in terms of your tempo and your tolerance. But I feel like in a lot of ways, I'm still as hungry as I was 20 years ago, and so I'm still very motivated to keep adding to the catalog versus being like, all right, like, I've done all that I had to say, and here's what you can listen to. Like, I'm still very excited to add new records to everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, too. I interviewed RBX probably about I guess week or a few two ago,
Uh,
and he kind of said, he sat with he just really didn't focus on um, his music as far as like falling in love with a particular song, or somebody told him what's they like this song or they like that song, or asked him what his favorite was, because
right,
I did ask him what his favorite song was. He
right.
just kind of he was like, I'm kind of in the moment.
Yeah,
So that's kind of like what you said, you're kind of in the moment. You don't fall in love with each individual song. You kind of respect each project as its own.
yeah. I think that's largely true. I mean, I will say, you're gonna have your own favorites. Like, like, I have my own favorites, whether it's like certain albums that I personally think came out really good or that I have a personal affinity with, for instance. And there's certain songs that I just particularly, like, a lot of artists will pump themselves up to make you believe that every second that they do is great, right? And I'm a little bit different in the sense that, I've got songs where I'm like, yeah, I was really hitting, like, I was really, like, I put my whole foot in that. And there's other songs where I'm like, okay, like, I see, I got it out, it was cool. But I do think you have sort of like your own top 10 in terms of, like, okay, if I had to put my catalog up against anybody, right? Like, what would be the top 10? What would be the top 10 songs that I would pick? And I could definitely make a list of, like, stuff that I think would hold up against anybody. But it is a little bit like choosing your favorite child. It's kind of hard to be like, oh, like, I could say, like, Connected was my firstborn, quote unquote, and it did really well. So it was a smart kid, an achieving kid achieved a lot. But it was my firstborn, so I didn't know what I was doing. You know what I'm saying? I was kind of flying by the seat of my pants, and since then I've learned a lot. I've gotten a lot better. So my own favorites are probably more recent stuff, because I feel like I've gotten so much better. Of course, the audience is the real kind of gauge. I always say the audience is never wrong. And the audience tends to pick a song as their favorites that you didn't think it was going to be like I personally, for instance, have the experience that, like, if I toil away for years on something, right, and it's my magnum opus, and it's like, oh my God, this has tempo changes and orchestras and freaking this and that, or I just have a song that I did in a couple of hours on the afternoon. Like, I've learned over time that 9 out of 10 times people gravitate towards the one that I did in an afternoon. You know what I'm saying? Like, that I was like, okay, this is cool. So you kind of learn that the audience is the real gauge, and they're never wrong, you know? So I'm always like, when I drop a new project, I'm just looking forward to see which ones are the ones that people gravitate towards, because it's always different than I thought, you know. So once you give the music out of hand, you also kind of no longer have control over it, you know what I mean? So, but that said, I definitely have my favorites. I definitely have my moments in my catalog where I'm particularly proud of it, and that can be because of a personal connection, or it can be because I thought the mix came out really good, you know what I mean? Like, it sounds like, or it can be because I just really love the song in particular, you know? So there's definitely those that I could point out. But yeah, at the end of the day, they're kind of all like your kids, and be kind of messed up to pick one over the other, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
I love this kid more than the other kid. That would be a little weird.
definitely. And you talked about your production. What did you start out with, far as equipment wise?
Oh man, I just started out with a computer. Like, that was it. I didn't have any equipment. I I didn't really have like, I'm not somebody who came from a background of using like an MPC or some stuff like that, or like or like SP 1200. Like, I didn't. I started getting really into hip hop, but I never kind of understood the production side of it. I had a very naive understanding of it, where I thought, like, okay, it's a guy with two turntables making these beats as he goes, and I didn't really know that the production of these records involved a lot more than that, that it was sampling and beat programming and just layering of stuff, and that you had these machines that people were using, like Akai samplers, or SP 1200 drum computers, or MPCs. And so I didn't really have that understanding. So I just had a computer because I had a computer. Everybody has a computer, right? So I had a computer, and I downloaded. My brother actually hit me to this particular program that you could just load sounds into, and you could make sort of your own little beats, right? It was kind of rudimentary, but it was fun, and I didn't really like, again, I didn't really have an agenda. I just was looking to have some fun. It was kind of like an equivalent of playing video games for me. It was like, oh, I'm just spending some fun time on the computer, and I would make these little beats, and then at nighttime I would turn the computer off. I didn't even think to save them at the time initially. I would just make these little tracks, and then it was like, all right, that was fun. Turn the computer off, and then the next day I would do it again. So I wouldn't even save the first sort of attempts at music making that I did. I don't think anything was lost on that. Like, I wasn't really very good. But yeah, I just had a computer, and I had a couple of instruments from that I had left over from days when I was to play in bands. So I had a bass guitar and I had a keyboard. And so yeah, initially, man, I didn't have any equipment at all. It was pure, man, it was pure imagination. We were really making records, like, just purely fueled by imagination, by kind of trying to recreate the sounds that we heard on the records that we loved, you know what I'm saying? But we didn't have access to studios or equipment. Like, we just had to sort of do it MacGyver style, you know what I mean? We just had to do it with spit and glue and a lot of hubris, you know what I mean? Like, again, imagination, So I kind of found out how to sample. I kind of found out how I could record my records into the computer, and then I learned that I could chop up the particular sample. And I learned as I went along. I learned all these little different parts about the production process, like drums and how do you program drums, and like I really kind of learned as I go. And looking back, that was probably the most fun I've had making music, because you have all these challenges, you don't know how it works, and then all of a sudden you have this aha moment of like, okay, this is how they do it, or at least it sounds very close to how the records that you love. So those are really fun times, because all of a sudden, after trying for days on end to kind of figure something out, all of a sudden it reveals itself to you, and just like, oh wow, this is it. And so it was kind of 2 years for me of truly just experimenting and learning the craft, you know what I mean? And yeah, I think looking back, that was some of the most fun I've ever had making music. Probably made the worst music I made at the time, but really a lot of fun learning sort of like all these things that I heard on records, you know what I mean? So but yeah, I didn't really have much of equipment at all at the time.
So what do you use now?
At this point I'm kind of back there. Like over the last 20 years, I had a time when I would collect, keyboards and synthesizers. I had a whole room full of analog gear and stuff like that. But it was really kind of during the like I scored a film for ESPN a couple of years ago, a 30 for 30 documentary, and that required for me to be super flexible, you know what I mean? Because when you do a movie, it's not really about the music, it's about the story that you tell and the story that you support, so it's kind of you're part of a team. And as a result of that, I had to be super flexible, because they kept changing. It'd be like one day the scene was this, and then the next day they cut a minute out, and, so I had to be really, really flexible, because the edit kept changing, you know what I mean? They kept sort of shaving off of this movie and make it better and better and better. So it also meant that the music had to keep changing. I keep having to make these edits. So it became really important for me to be super flexible, So that was a moment where I really started sort of consciously make the decision to be truly in the box, and go back to kind of the computer, and kind of going back to sort of like really kind of consolidating my setup so that it allowed for me to be really, really flexible. And so at this point, I'm kind of back to where I once started, which is like I use Pro Tools, which is kind of industry standard music platform. But yeah, the computer is back to being sort of the kind of center focus of my setup, because I just wanted to be flexible, you know what I'm saying? So but I still love playing instruments. I really like picking up a guitar or a keyboard or a bass. But yeah, I'm as they say, fully in the box right now. You know what I'm saying? So fully digital, and really enjoying the flexibility that gives me.
So what got you into, or what opened that door for you to go into the kind of the film space and to be able to do the 30 for 30?
Man, so I've always wanted to do that. Like I always had a dream of like doing film music, but it just never really panned out. And then one day, out of the blue, I got an email from the director, Ismail El-Amin, a really amazing guy from Akron, Ohio. And as it turns out, he is also a promoter. So he would book shows, and he had booked us, like the Foreign Exchange, for a show in the Ohio area, maybe as far back as like 15 years ago. And he had just become a really, really big fan. And so he had always sort of had me in mind. And when he started working on this film, it's the life story of which a American track and field athletes from the kind of the mid 90s. And and who is from Akron, Ohio. So it kind of made sense that he would tell the story. But track and field is kind of a sport that is particularly really big in Europe. You know, much bigger there than it is here. So he had the brilliant idea. I mean, I say brilliant. Well, it was literally brilliant. He was like, kind of wanted somebody that could bring sort of like a European sensibility to the score. And so he thought of me because, you know, for obvious reasons, I've been making all these records over here, but, you know, I do sort of have kind of that European feel. So he really wanted to sort of express the fact that a lot of the film's action, you know, takes place overseas. So he just sent me an email. He's like, "Is this something you want to do?" And I
Oh, we had a little technical difficulty. Hopefully, we'll get him to join back in a second. Of course, you know, we'll never know how these things are going to work out. Sometimes they have technical difficulties and things fall off. But once again, we'd like to thank him for coming on. Um, we got Willie Scandals coming up. We got Sauce from the Valley. We've got Eddie Ruger. And we've got Finian St. Omer coming up. Sean Dawn, of course, of Justice League and Little Brother fame. We'll slide on into the next month. We've got the Real Kids coming on 1st of November. Jamal Matters coming on the 8th of November. Drasmatic on the 15th of November. And on the 22nd of November, we've got Pace One. We're going to try to get him, Nicolay, right back in for a second so we can finish off this interview. All right. All right.
My bad,
Technical
bro.
interviews. Gotta love the internet. You know what I mean?
Technical difficulties. But yeah, I was like, I'll just wrap up that answer right quick. But yeah, I he reached out to me. The director reached out to me, and I had to think about doing a documentary. I had more or less imagined I would do like a thriller first or some cool stuff, and I had to get used to the documentary because that's a very different platform. But I said yes, and it ended up being great. It was a big honor to watch my own film on ESPN. It came out this last June, and it came out really good. It was really cool. We attended a premiere screening of the film in April in Durham, and just to see your own music on a big screen is quite thrilling.
I think we're gonna have some more technical difficulties trying to get him back in. Um, what we'll do, we're coming up on an hour. As soon as I get him back in, we'll get this last question in, and we'll get him back in here for a few.
The Gremlins. It's Gremlins. Sorry about that, brother. I don't know what's the word. Like yeah, we got a little issue here, but no, but I wanted to come back and you have one more question you said?
Yeah. Just basically, what do you have going on that's new and exciting? What's your next projects up?
So right now we have a new single out with the Foreign Exchange, dropped in June, and it's called The Gray. And it was actually, to come back to the movie question, it was actually the final cut in the film. It's the song that runs under the end credits of the documentary. Was a brand new Foreign Exchange song. It's called The Gray, and the B-side is our Sade cover of "I Couldn't Love You More." It's kind of a dub version of the famous Sade song. So that is out right now. I have a single out currently called "Roll Up," which is a single that I did with my man Creative Theory, who is an incredible talent from Fayetteville, North Carolina. So yeah, man, always grinding out new music. I'm doing shows. For people who might be watching in North Carolina, I got a show going on in Charlotte, North Carolina, on November 1st, where I do my live production, my beat set, my kind of DJing. So I'm really looking forward to it. So November 1st, I'm at the Neighborhood Theater in Charlotte, NC. So yeah, man, just staying busy. Just really staying busy. Always new music, always new things to explore. So yeah, man, just keeping busy, brother.
All right, no doubt. Who do you want to shout out before we go ahead and round everything out?
Man, always shouts out to my FE Music family. Fonte, Darian Brockington, Cy Smith, Carmen Rogers, Khalida Duran, Beat My Fiasco, Bane, Creative Theory. Everybody that is watching, of course, and just everybody's been listening. I appreciate the audience over the years. We've been very fortunate that we've had a very loyal audience over the years. And so I really appreciate everybody's listening, and please stay tuned for what's coming.
All right. And how can they get in touch with you?
Man, they can get in touch with me over here on Instagram, or I'm every now and then on Twitter. But yeah, get me on the Instagram. They can go to theforeignexchangemusic.com. They can find all of our music on the streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple Music. So yeah, we everywhere. We in there.
All right. We'll definitely appreciate you coming on. You can come back anytime. We
Absolutely,
hope
brother.
to network more in the future. Hopefully collab on some things. Like I said, next week we got Willie Scandals. He's a rapper out of Canada. We got Sauce from the Valley the week after, and from that same little brother Click, that whole family. We got Finney and Saint Omer, Sean Dawn coming
That's
on
my
at the
main
end of the
guy,
month.
Finn. Finn is the man. That's my dude. Shout out to Finn, aka Sean Dawn, the one and only.
No doubt. And of course, you can always check out everything on myself, Mr. J, the Empire, on www.empiremusic.com. That'll have all your links to everywhere, including this live and this show, The Underground Experience, and of course, the Underground Experience blog, where I'm always showcasing independent artists. So, all y'all have a good one. Peace.
Peace. Thank you, brother. You have a good one.
You too.
Peace.
Peace.